I'm just about live on YouTube. Okay, Ollie.
All right. I'd like to call this meeting, regular Board of Education meeting to order.
I think I'm gonna have to ask you to raise your voice just a little bit.
So I'm calling this regular board meeting to order. And we will start by reciting our vision statement. Every school will be a thriving school that prepares every student to graduate from high school, college, career, and community ready. Nikki, I'm going to ask you to have the newly elected board members take the oath of office, Damian Castro and Maya Pearson. Welcome to the board.
Welcome to the board. Maya, congratulations and welcome back to the board. Sabian, would you please stand and raise your right hand?
Good to be here.
Please repeat after me. I, Sabian Castro,
I, Savian Castro,
having been elected to the office of school board member
having been elected office as school board member
for the Madison Metropolitan School District,
for the Madison Metropolitan School District,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Sabian.
Thank you.
Maya, please stand. Please raise your right hand. I, Maya Pearson,
I, Maya Pearson,
having been elected to the office of school board member
having been elected to the office of school board member
for the Madison Metropolitan School District,
for the Madison Metropolitan School District,
affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You are duly sworn. Both are duly sworn, madam.
All right. Election of board officers. We have 5 offices to fill. That is president, vice president, clerk, treasurer, and secretary. The current vice president shall preside over the election as ranking officers over the election of president, if you prefer. All right. Any nominations for president of the board?
I nominate Elaine Muldrow for president of the Madison Metropolitan School Board.
Nikki, I accept your nomination, and we will now vote on that unless there are
Are there any other nominations?
other nominations. All right.
All right, I will launch the poll. Okay, Elaine Muldrow is the new president. Thank you.
Congratulations.
I will now accept nominations for the office of vice president.
I would like to nominate Savian Castro for vice president.
I accept your nomination. Thank you.
Are there any other nominations? All right.
Launching poll. Thank you, Vivian Castro, the new vice president.
I will now accept a nomination for the office of
Sure.
treasurer. Thank you, Barb.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
I would like to nominate Christina Gomez-Schmidt.
Christina Gomez-Schmidt has been nominated unless there are any other nominations.
I nominate Ananda.
Accept the
I'm
nomination.
sorry, Maya,
I nominate Ananda.
thank you.
I accept the nomination. Thank you.
Ms. Gomez-Schmidt, did you accept the nomination?
I'm actually gonna decline that nomination.
Thank you.
Any other,
I'm sorry, Barb.
go ahead, any other nominations?
Any other nominations? All right.
Okay, I'll launch the polling. Okay. Ananda Morelli is our new treasurer.
Thank you.
I will now accept a nomination for the office of board clerk.
I'd like to nominate Nikki Vandermeulen.
I accept the nomination.
Are there any other nominations? All right, I think we're good to go.
Launching the poll. Thank you very much. Mr. Vandermeulen continues to be the clerk.
Thank you.
All right, and Barb, I'm gonna ask you about this technically. So I am accepting a nomination for the office of board secretary.
Okay.
Nominating Kelly Rubel.
And you can vote by acclamation if you prefer, or I can launch the poll.
I thought Barb was,
No, it's always Kelly. Mike,
oh,
I'll launch the poll.
okay.
Very good. Kelly Rupel continues to be the secretary.
I'm sorry?
I never knew.
Thank you,
all
everybody.
For moving us through that pretty rapidly. And thank you for electing me your board president. I'll now read a resolution recognizing East High School.
If I could, before you start that, if Paul, are you here? Can you, turn on your video, please? Paul Millish?
Hello.
Hi, Paul, can you just, give us a little intro, please, before we go into the resolution?
Oh, sure. Yes, I'm the producing director of theater at East High School, and we participated in the Wisconsin High School Theater Festival virtually this year. Our production made it to the state level of the tournament, and we received awards in excellence in technical theater, outstanding ensemble, and excellence in directing.
Paul, would you please introduce the students who are in the meeting with us?
Let's see. Well, I have Noah right here. We are recording solos right now at Demetral Park. for our musical production that we're working on. Dante Alvarado, I saw. This is Noah Erisman. Neva Frankhauser, I see, and that's all I can see from the cast.
Yes, from the students, if we've missed anyone, please let us know. We'd like to see you. Please turn your videos on so we can see all the students. Thank you. Pretty close, pretty close. Thank you for attending. We have a resolution for you that will be read by the board president.
Thank you so much for your work, Paul, and thank you for joining us this evening, you and the young people at East. And it's pretty cool what you have set up at Demetral, I must say and acknowledge. The resolution is, whereas 25 student cast and crew members of the East Side Players of Madison East High School have successfully advanced to the state level of the Wisconsin High School Theater Festival for the 10th annual year. Whereas the 2021 Wisconsin High School Theater Festival consists of 1,800 participants featuring high school productions from all over the state, workshops with professional theater artists, college representatives, and vendors. Whereas since 1930, the Wisconsin High School Theater Festival has successfully showcased thousands of students, spotlighting the hard work of theater students while simultaneously celebrating their success. Whereas the East Side Players production of Alone Together is a comedy drama consisting of 39 extraordinary pieces that brought the challenges of longing for connection during the pandemic to life, successfully connecting real-world experiences via theater performances. Whereas the Madison East High School East Side Players production was adjudicated by 3 judges and received the All-State Award Outstanding Ensemble, Excellence in Technical Theater, and Excellence in Direction. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Madison Metropolitan School District Board of Education recognizes all members of the East Side Players of Madison East High School and their exceptional achievements. Be it further resolved that this statement will be permanently imprinted in the Board of Education minutes for the meeting of April 26, 2021. Congratulations, Eve. Thank you so much for your work, Paul. We appreciate you.
No, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, students.
All right.
Written registration.
So written registration, summary, we have 4 written registrations, 3 in support of keeping equity for students at the forefront in resource allocation and budget decisions. 1 in support of the preliminary budget items specific to restorative justice and safety and to mental health support. And then, Barb, do you know?
Yes, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 public appearances, starting with Barbie Jackson.
All right, Barbie Jackson, we are ready for you.
Barbie, if you could turn on your video and audio, great.
Good evening. I'm Barbie Jackson, a member of Moses. I'm here on behalf of Moses to enthusiastically support Dr. Jenkins' preliminary budget items specific to restorative justice and safety and to mental health support. Moses' mission is to build collective power to dismantle the systems of mass incarceration and mass supervision and to eradicate the racial disparities in our community that contribute to them. We are the local affiliate of Wisdom, a statewide grassroots organization composed mostly of 160 religious congregations from 19 different religious traditions. We work to have a common voice on issues of social justice, including stopping the school to prison pipeline. I'm a practicing peacemaker in Dane County's Community Restorative Court and a 25-year youth mentor in the Allied Drive and Elver Park communities. Restorative practices have been shown to reduce high school students' suspensions, expulsions, and involvement in the carceral system. For this reason, I enthusiastically support the restorative justice components of the budget proposal within the broad set of 16 components of the district's safety and security plan. I was particularly thrilled to see that this budget expands on the recommendations by the board's ad hoc committee on safety and security to include not just 2, but 4 FTE restorative justice coaches, 1 in each comprehensive high school. This approach will go a long way toward serving our youth to help them find positive solutions in conflict situations rather than punitive approaches that could otherwise feed the school to prison pipeline. Our youth deserve the care and services these coaches will provide. Our Racial Justice for All Children Task Force, which I co-chair, also is highly supportive of expanded mental health services in the schools. We have been engaging with district staff to learn more about the effectiveness of existing services pertaining to childhood trauma, and will continue that engagement and analysis of existing programs. As we study and learn more about the specific programs targeted in the budget, I can say that we are pleased to see attention and budget provisions for expanded mental health care. Additionally, as members of the Wisdom statewide network, we recently met with our local legislators and will be testifying at the Joint Finance Committee hearing later this week to support expanded mental health services in Governor Evers' budget. These include $47 million in mental health aid to reimburse school spending for social workers, counselors, psychologists, and nurses, and $3.5 million annually for provision of mental health services to pupils through collaborative school community partnerships. If the final state budget retains these items, we are hopeful that the school district will expand mental health services even further than currently proposed in your budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Barb, our next public appearance.
Our next speaker is Jeannie Burns-Frank.
Jeannie Burns-Frank, we're ready for you.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Jenkins, members of the board, and others that are here tonight. I am a parent at La Follette, and I'm a VP on the La Follette Boosters. And I was here in February talking about the need for money for La Follette to see some changes in equity across the schools. And I'm back to talk about equity a little bit more, just so that it is on the forefront of everyone's mind in the upcoming budget. I know that what we want at La Follette is that all students should have the same opportunities for success, regardless of what schools they attend and where they live in La Follette, in Madison District. And we really think that there needs to be a spotlight on La Follette in terms of equity. And funding allocations are not my specialty, but I encourage you to think about how the allocations are currently set and how graduation rates and success of students at La Follette are impacted by those allocations and how they are set. And I'm thinking that looking at metrics of students that are coming into La Follette and leaving La Follette and our graduation rates might be a good place to start, that if the allocations and the formula we've been using, the school district has been using for the past several years has not changed the outcome of students at La Follette, I encourage you to think about how that might be changed so that we can see students at La Follette graduating and having the same success as the other 4 comprehensive high schools and all the high school graduates in the Madison School District. So I would just like that the district could look at how you would support the students at La Follette in addition to academic offerings that showcase their excellence and their ability to achieve. In addition, I just want to put a plug in for, I know that the TID money has been discussed as something that the board has talked about for La Follette, so I just want to make sure that you're still considering that for La Follette in going forward with this budget. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Kathy Klein.
Welcome, Kathy Klein.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, thanks. Hello, members of the board and Dr. Jenkins. I too actually am here to talk about equity in the budget. I recently, a couple hours ago, finished a meeting with a group of parents who are trying to figure out a way to fundraise for outdoor recreation equipment at Wright Middle School on the south side. Several of these parents are also concurrently fundraising for a playground at Lincoln Elementary, which is also on the south side in the same neighborhood, Burr Oaks neighborhood. We don't hear about playgrounds a whole lot. They come on your consent agenda, and the donations come in, and you usually, I hope because our Lincoln playground is on the consent agenda today, approve them. But I just wanted to let you know that playground fundraising is actually very difficult, which I guess all fundraising is. But in the light of a lot of fundraising that's going on in the district right now and COVID relief money coming in, we're wondering if it's at all possible, if you might consider finding some money in the budget for some outdoor recreation equipment at Wright. It's very difficult to fundraise for two schools in the same neighborhood at the same time. I guess outdoor equipment is really important at elementary schools, but it is at middle schools as well. Right now, Wright only has, for outdoor activities, there are 2 basketball hoops and a pretty old tetherball and a very old soccer goal. So we're just thinking about, in light of COVID, with the restrictions on kids inside, we're trying to get kids outside more. We feel it's really important for kids to be outside. And that's it. I'll just leave my comments there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Katie France.
Welcome, Katie Graham.
Hello. Thanks. Thanks for having me tonight. So my name is Katie France, and I'm the parent of a junior at La Follette and a 7th grader at Senate. And I was also here in February. A group of us parents at La Follette, and we're trying to grow to include more and more parents, have been working really hard to try to get some fundraising going, to be able to do for the La Follette kids what the West Side high schools were able to do with using the momentum of the referendum to hopefully further fundraising that can build on that referendum. So we have some exciting things in the works at La Follette. I'm speaking tonight to urge you to center equity in every decision that you make in your operating budget and your allocations. La Follette would benefit from additional allocations for remedial the FTEs, just to help students catch up on their way coming from 8th grade into La Follette. Take a look at what, and I don't have the stats handy, but take a look at what the needs are for the different high schools, because it's very different. What does La Follette need to get the students at freshman year up to reading level, up to math level? My dogs are going nuts. Consider that before you make the the general allocations. Beyond, oh my goodness.
No worries, Katie. Those are not the first puppies to participate.
Dog's got a comment.
Sounds like your dogs are passionate about equity as well.
He's clearly a West That dog won't come in.
Sorry, I got muted again. Just to finish, beyond that, we're requesting that you take a look. I know we didn't get a chance to get a full audit done, which is something that we requested in February, to see what course offerings, extracurricular activities, and facilities and other dedication to excellence that were that are available at the 4 comprehensive high schools. But with that in mind, because it's such a short turnaround, I would just encourage you to consider the different needs of the different high schools, getting them to a base level before further allocations. And as a side note, because I just heard that prior parent who I don't know, I was shocked recently, a couple weeks ago, I learned that playgrounds are not part of, like, that they come about by fundraising, and that, you know, that's another opportunity to consider who can get the fundraising done and who can't, and potentially make some adjustments there. Thank you. Appreciate your time tonight. Sorry for the dogs.
Our next speaker is Kelly Ferguson.
Welcome, Kelly Ferguson.
Hello, thank you. My name is Kelly Ferguson, and I've been a world language teacher in this district now for 18 years. And I am speaking on the issues of equity, similar to what has been raised. Across the country, it's really pretty usual for students who take 2 years of language classes in the middle school, when they arrive in high school as freshmen, to start with level 2 of that. And in some places, those students would actually move into level 3. Over the past 7 or so years, this has become less and less possible for students, in particular those feeding into the East Side high schools in MMSD. Many of the middle school programs within the La Follette and East feeder patterns have seen offerings reduced. There was one school at one point providing 1/3 the amount of instruction that all other schools in the other feeder patterns received. Across the city right now, there are currently 3 middle schools, Blackhawk, Toki, and Wright, that offer only one choice of language, which is Spanish. Our heritage Spanish speakers at those schools do not have a new language available to them. And while Wright and Toki offer cohort sections as like a heritage language class, Blackhawk has no such offering. Although there has been some recent improvement in scheduling at some of the middle schools, all of the middle schools on the East Side and Wright Middle School provide world language instruction every other day, while all of the middle schools feeding into West and Memorial, with the exception of Wright, provide for daily instruction, which sets up students on one side of this city to be behind the curve in terms of reaching advanced levels of language proficiency, not to mention how demoralizing it is to take 2 years of a language and then be told, you're not ready for level 2 because the kid at that other school had twice as much class as you, so you need to start over. So as a teacher in this district, I've always appreciated how the district lets each of the schools, especially the high schools, put their own spin on things, allow the personality of that school to thrive. And our schools don't need to be identical. It's great that different things are offered in different places, but there is need for assurance that all of our students have opportunities to excel that don't depend on their zip code. And I hope as allocation and budget decisions are made, that these issues come to the forefront, and not just in world language classes, but across all content areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Barb, is that our final speaker?
No, our final speaker is Tony Gennaro.
Welcome, Tony Gennaro.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Thank you, members of the board, for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Tony Gennaro, and I'm a bilingual social studies teacher at La Follette High School. I'm also our multilingual ed department chair, which for us at La Follette means a blending of our ESL and DLI programming. And I'm also here to speak and echo some of the concerns that my colleagues and parents and families have been bringing up regarding to equity of funding at La Follette, and really across the district, right? Like bringing up this issue that equity, that not all schools have the same needs and the same opportunities, and that our budget really has the opportunity to impact that. So I want to echo what families have said around the inequalities that have been expressed around fundraising opportunities in the district across the comprehensives, but really more today, I want to speak briefly about the operating budget. I'm not an expert by any means, but I urge you to speak to the experts and particularly the leaders in the La Follette community. But I want to just draw attention to the fact that La Follette, we have the asset of having one of the most diverse student communities and of the comprehensive high schools. And we also are the smallest comprehensive high school. And so when it comes to allocation, sometimes a budget cut or an allocation cut can have a deeper impact than it can in other schools. A really, really brief example, we're running the same amount of programming that other schools are, or we strive to, but sometimes that can have, when we have a smaller group of staff, those pulls of those different programming, those different courses has a different impact on those staff, on the sustainability of staff. When it comes, in my neck of the universe around bilingual staff, which we know is a high turnover area within our district, we often see the amount of pulls on those staff when we're trying to provide all the programming that we are, with a smaller allocation pool and a smaller staff pool. I think the issue around these opportunities to have the diversity of courses that other schools offer is oftentimes more difficult at La Follette when we have a smaller allocation pool to work with. So I just encourage you all to consider that La Follette has seen some dips in enrollment in the most recent years. And I think there's a danger if we continue to just allow number of students to impact operating budget, to see families to continue to make choices with their feet based on difficult decisions that La Follette will have to make around the programs and courses and things we are able to offer with more limits in our funding. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for always putting equity at the forefront of your decisions.
Thank you. Another final speaker.
All right, and that closes out our public comment. Board President's announcements and reports, April 26, 2021. Also, Dong, Senate 8th grader gives impassioned speech regarding anti-Asian racism. This past March, Senate Middle School 8th grader Elsa Zong had given an impassioned speech during the virtual Project Soapbox citywide event to speak out against anti-Asian racism and rhetoric brought on during the coronavirus pandemic in the last year. Elsa's dynamic speech successfully reached hundreds of her MMSD peers, school educators, and staff. The Madison community leaders during the annual spoken word showcase, where middle and high school students across the district came together to speak up about issues that matter to them and impact the lives of their families. The board recognizes Elsa Zong for her bravery and courage to speak up at on this very important topic that affects students, staff, and entire communities across the country. West student featured in the Cap Time for his podcast, the Madisonian podcast. Beginning last year, in March of 2020, West freshman Ben Brown had begun to look for a social outlet in this virtual world. Just weeks after school shut down, he created his own podcast called the Madisonian Podcast, which features Zoom interviews with activists, entrepreneurs, and more. Ben has been very successful in bringing people together during these unprecedented times and has been a vocal advocate of building relationships and connections with a wide variety of his peers and Madisonians alike. The board congratulates and recognizes Ben Brown for his hard work and his dedication while connecting people who may not otherwise have had the opportunity to do so. Superintendent's announcements, early literacy and beyond.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair Muldrow. And we have an opportunity tonight to get an update on our early literacy and beyond. And we're going to have our team, led by Ms. Lisa Kipstad, tonight give us an update. And we're very excited to give this update with all the great work that's going on. So, Ms. Kipstad.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. So we are excited tonight to bring a team of folks together to let you know what is happening in the multiple areas in which we've been working for early literacy and beyond. We're really excited to have two building principals with us tonight to share their work. And I am going to pass it over in about 3 seconds to our Dr. Gabi Bell, who is our Director of Literacy and Biliteracy, and she has been leading this work with her team and with a cross-functional group, including principals. So really happy to have this presentation tonight and to have a discussion about this really important work that we're doing around anti-racism and the work that we're doing around the science of reading. So Gabi, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you so much, members of the board and guests and Dr. Jenkins and many colleagues. Barb, would you be so kind as to show the slides, my dear? Thank you so much. I want to start by asking us all to pause for a second, because it is so easy to think that this is going to be a presentation like any other presentation. But I want you to be able to remember 18 months from now what you are hearing here today, because we are at the cusp of a beginning of a new way of engaging and doing this work. So just wait for a second. So 18 months when we're famous and we're in the New York Times, you're gonna say, I remember being in that board meeting. I remember that day, okay? So today is April 26th and we're talking about early literacy and beyond. Barb, my dear, could we go to the next slide, please? It is important to say that our early literacy and beyond strategy is first and foremost an anti-racist strategy. It is about ensuring that we're engaging in anti-racist practices of high expectations for absolutely every single one of our students. Could we go to the next one, please? Oh, there we go. And when we say anti-racist strategies, we are going to call it by name. We are saying that we are rooted in our absolute commitment for our Black students, so that all the students in the Madison Metropolitan School District will receive high quality, grade level accelerated instruction. And when we say all, we mean all. We're saying that we're not only completely engaged and committed to our African American students and our Black students, but we're inviting to our party our English language learners and our kiddos with disabilities, because these are also student populations that have historically not been served. Could we go to the next one, please? All of these has to have a heart, has to have a vision. And our vision in this district, once again, is that absolutely every student, but especially those 3 groups of students that I was telling you about, will be, that every school that we have will be a thriving school that prepares every student to graduate ready for college, career, and community. So in other words, we are recognizing that absolutely every single one of our kiddos is one of a kind. And because they're one of a kind, they deserve and they're entitled, after being with us for 13 years, to be able to do great things, including going to college, having a career, and being part of this or any other community. They're going to be wealth to any community that they are part of. Can we go to the next one? And I'm going to pass this one to Ms. Collector Stanford.
Thank you. I just want to share in Dr. Gabi Bell's enthusiasm around our early literacy and beyond plan. I could literally listen to her talk about literacy all day, just for her passion that she brings to the work. And as a former teacher and instructional coach and principal in MMSD, I am excited about the opportunities that this plan presents in changing outcomes for our students, giving teachers the necessary tools, and restructuring how we teach reading. As a district, we have evolved in our approach to literacy, and the Early Literacy and Beyond plan is intentional, collaborative, and comprehensive. So there's an intentionality in that we are providing staff research-based tools for how to teach reading. We're not only prioritizing this work, but we are investing in the work, and we're working collaboratively through our partnerships with Dr. Gloria Latsing-Billings, UW-Madison, ANET, and the Big Five. And there's a comprehensive approach through our alignment for K through 12. Later in the presentation, you will have the pleasure to hear from two of our principals who will take you on their journey, but are also leading this work in our district. And that is Jackie Smith, principal of Gompers Elementary, and Sarah Larson, principal of Elvium. Next slide.
I am muted. I wish that there was a drum roll for this slide because this is super exciting. So in January, a team from central office, principals, teacher leaders started our journey in letters training. And very, very quickly, we realized we cannot keep this for ourselves. We must invite those that are best positioned to lead instruction in the buildings. So in March, we started a conversation and we invited 135 coaches, kindergarten through 12, early childhood specialists. We invited reading teachers, reading specialists, and 135 people engaged in this learning. And they were so excited that they couldn't help themselves. And they went back to buildings and they talked to their neighbors and they talked to their friends. And then principals started calling. And then a few weeks after we started the training, we proposed that explicit grade levels were going to be the ones that were going to be part of the training. And the response has been so overwhelming that we are presenting to you now a second draft that includes much more. Right now, we are ready to start letters training for everybody from 4K to grade 6 next year, and then grade 9. And then the following year, 22-23, moving to letters training for grade 7 and grade 10th, and then closing up with grade 11 in the 23-24 school year. We are inviting about 1,200 staff members. Yes, you heard it here, 1,200 staff members, all 4K to kindergarten classroom teachers, CC teachers, ESL and BRTs. 6-8 were inviting in this journey in literacy, by literacy, humanities, DLI humanities, for 9 through 12 English and social studies classroom teachers, as well as chairs for English, social studies, and ESL. So we're very, very excited to be able to continue this excitement that exists right now as we're engaging in the learning. Could we go to the next slide, please? Now, you might be asking yourself, what is all this fuss? Really, must we train 1,200 people next year? This is the question that we must ask ourselves. How can so many students be graduating from our schools, from high school, unprepared to meet their goals for college and career? Can we go to the next slide? This is what we know is true. Our students are willing and able to do those things and engage in those tasks that we ask of them. The trick is that we are not always asking for tasks that are at the rigor and the level of the standard of the grade level. Students have spent most of their time in our schools without having access to 4 key resources. Pay attention, there's not going to be a quiz, but this is very, very important. Grade level appropriate assignments. This is not something that is universally accessible for our babies. A strong instruction, deep engagement, and teachers who hold high expectations. And we know that these resources lack especially for students of color, low-income students, English language learners, and students with moderate disabilities. So because of that, it is of critical importance that we are able to create access of these 4 resources, because that is the only way in which we are going to improve student achievement. I want you to hold this idea in your mind, because now I'm going to show you some numbers on how it's at this place here in Madison. Could we go to the next one, please, Barb? Thank you. Okay, bear with me. We're going to go back and forth for a second. This slide shows you the percentage of MMSD students in kindergarten, 3rd grade, and 8th grade that met proficiency in the 18-19th school year. So you can see in the beginning of the slide, students from kindergarten in the spring, so at the end of their kindergarten year, that met the benchmark for PALS. And I want you to notice how in English, we are really in between the 84 and the 81% range. It is important to know that PALS is a screener, okay? So it tells us whether or not the kiddos are in the zip code of where we want them to be or not. If we note the numbers for PALS and Espanol, we see that the performance is substantially different at the end of the school year. We have ranges as low as 46% and as high as 62% depending on the year, okay? And the other side of the slide, you can note now 3rd grade and 8th grade performance on the forward assessment. The forward assessment has different psychometric qualities. And because of that, it actually measures at the rigor of the grade level standard. We see here, and this is something that it's hard for me to articulate because it's a little bit terrifying, that in 3rd grade, in the 2015-2016 school year, only 36% of the students in 3rd grade met proficiency. And in 8th grade, in that same year, it's only 33% of the students met also the proficiency in the forward assessment. And you can see how across the years, the numbers and the percentages do not change. So imagine a universe in which of every 100 kiddos that are in classes, only 36% of them are going to be proficient. Could we go to the next slide, please? Now, why is it that this is important? If you look at the first bar on top on the deep blue, you can see the number of students that were proficient in 3rd grade. So this is the way that we read it. The first one would be 86% of the students that were proficient in 3rd grade maintained their proficiency by 5th grade. Now look at the bottom bars. These are the students that did not meet proficiency. Only 14% of all the students who were not proficient in 3rd grade were able to recuperate and become proficient by 3rd grade. People, this is the heart of our strategy. We do not want to wait until our kiddos are behind. We want to get at this much sooner. We don't ever want it to be a gap. We want to be able to serve our students from the beginning. Could we go to the next slide, please? Now, how is it that we're proposing to do this? Why is it that we're engaging in letters? Understanding the letters training is one of the levers of our multi-pronged approach. Our universal strategy is that on the daily, our students are going to be able to have access to rigorous instruction that is going to attend to the science of reading. And the science of reading is nested on the theoretical proposal of the simple view of reading that says that we are going to be attentive to both word recognition, phonological awareness, decoding, sight recognition. You have heard me talk about this before, but also, and at the same time, we're going to attend to language comprehension. And that we're going to do this not in spite of each other, but together, because both of them, the multiplication of these things is going to allow for our kiddos to be able to read for meaning. And I think that is my last slide. And I'm passing it over to our beautiful principals.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Larson, and I am the principal at LVM Elementary School. And as Carletta said, I'm joined today by Jackie Smith from Gompers. And we wanted to just share with you, again, we were here earlier this year, but share with you about our journey to how we got to where we are this year, and then what we've learned and where we are today, and how our new learning is impacting what we're planning for next year. So at LVM, next slide, please. Our journey started with a group of teachers, true collective efficacy, asking for and recognizing that we needed some additional professional development in how to teach students to read. And so they did their own research and brought letters to my attention and asked if a cohort of teachers could start that this year. In addition to that, our school started our partnership with ANET, or the Achievement Network, this past school year. And through that work with our ANET coach, we deepened our understanding of the standards, and our experiences of looking at rigorous texts and the ANET assessments opened our eyes to the rigor that the standards are expecting our students to reach. So our teachers recognized very quickly that the texts that we were putting in front of our youngest learners were not rigorous enough. And so we looked into trying out some new curricular resources. And this year we are using a Greenlit resource in our buildings because we are dedicated, or we're committed to providing all of our students rigorous texts to learn to read. The other piece at LVM that we spent a lot of time on this fall was really looking at changing our culture and our mindset so that all of our kids leave our building as readers because they have the right to read. Just like Gabby was saying, every single one of our kiddos need to be able to read. And so that is how we've gotten to where we are this year with our work in letters. We're just finishing up Unit 4 as a staff and implementing a Greenlit curriculum, the EL education. So Jackie, if you want to join and share Gomper's story.
Hey everybody, as Sarah and Carletra mentioned, I'm Jackie Smith. I'm the principal at Gompers Elementary School, and we were really lucky to share with y'all earlier this year regarding some of the practices we are doing, and just again, as Sarah said, providing the update. We did an important component about this as well has been cross-school collaboration. Sarah and myself and our instructional coaches have also been key members in this continuous collaboration of reflecting and adjusting, learning from student data, and working on what is best. Our journey to letters and foundational skills aligned with the science of reading really came through our analysis of complex text. And again, our students are very critical thinkers. They're super creative. And we found that they actually needed some more of the foundational skills in order to access the complex text. So we now have continued to ensure that our professional learning with staff and our curriculum provides the opportunity for students to have access to that word recognition skills and then the rich language instruction. And next slide, please. And I can share a little bit what has changed as a result. So our instructional practices that are shifting really include that emphasis as we think of our kindergarten through second grade schedules. In the past in MMSD, we've had separate reading and writing blocks. We are now moving K2 to a foundational skills block, which really addresses the blue components of word recognition, while we will continue to ensure that all of our students have access to rich language comprehension through rich text. Again, we are using at Gompers and LVM, the EL education curriculum to support us that. Also, we're diving deeper into data analysis and ensuring that we are assessing our students and then using those assessments for learning. So we can, again, support all students to build the foundational skills they need to access complex text. And as Zaretta Hammond says, any learning children do past 4th grade is based on literacy. So we want all of our students to be lifelong learners. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Jackie, and thank you, Sarah. We are learning from you and appreciate the leadership that you are displaying in your building and leading this work as an anti-racist strategy and really making the work and the focus on the science of reading come to life. So I am very grateful to be learning from you and happy that you were here with us today. So this slide we have seen before. This slide really documents and articulates our larger strategy with all of the different levers that we're utilizing with our early literacy and beyond strategy with the focus on the science of reading. So this is really about the schools being in the community being in the schools, and partnering with UW-Madison with our task force. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. It is an honor to be with our University of Wisconsin-Madison and co-chair this work with Dr. John Diamond, with the leadership of Dean Hess and Dr. Jenkins. We have quite a powerhouse of voices on that task force that are looking at their charge and will be submitting the final report towards the end of June. I also want to emphasize and lift from this slide that this is really a phased approach. And we look at it and we think about it on a daily basis. And as Gabi said earlier, we've made some changes over the course of the year based on what we're learning. So there is a short-term strategy, as Gabi articulated, with training people this year, moving to train 1,200 people next year. But there's also a longer-term strategy. And it's like buying a house, right? You want to keep things maintained. We want to keep that stock professional development going so we can continue to support people and refresh their learning moving forward. This is not a one and done. We believe in this as an anti-racist strategy. So you will see some of this work continue over the course of many years so that we can say all MMSD teachers are trained in the science of reading and understand what a rigorous grade level classroom looks like. We want to be sure that we're supporting students, that we're identifying the measurements of success. Baseline data is very important so that we can continue to learn from our approach. And we want to continue to educate and partner with our families and our community agencies and hear that voice within this work that we're doing around the science of reading. Next slide, please. So we are blessed to be working with Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings and have this amazing expert working with our coaches and our principals on the role of leadership in culturally responsive practices that are rooted in early literacy and beyond. So Gloria, Dr. Ladson-Billings, has been working with all of our principals, all of our instructional coaches, and she's going to continue this year and into next year. She actually asked all of our instructional coaches to write down what their commitment is to the work. If our coaches are continuing with us, we want to invest in them and support them in the work building this capacity at our schools. And Dr. Ladson-Billings also met with our literacy task force several weeks ago and talked with them about what the research says about reading being a right for our children and about the historical wrongs that have prevented students from learning how to read. This is much deeper than what we do on a day-to-day basis. This is about understanding the history and really understanding that this focus on early literacy, this is anti-racist practice. It's not that we're focusing on early literacy and then, oh, teach me over here how to be an anti-racist or how to be culturally responsive. This is the work. Holding students to high expectations and supporting them all of the way. And I held myself back from interjecting with Gabi and also with Jackie, but what they said is so important. It is critical that all of our students have access to grade level complex texts, that they build their vocabulary, that they hear the words, that they hear the stories, and they share in that and grow their own vocabulary so that they're able to meet the rigor of the standards moving forward. Next slide, please. So a little bit about our early literacy and beyond task force. So these are the 4 charges that were presented to the task force. And we have our task force divided into subcommittees to actually articulate the research and the learning around each of these charges. So as you can see, the first charge is really identifying and learning about how literacy, especially early literacy, is currently taught in MMSD and how our academic achievement data looks with respect to literacy. So that's the first charge. The next charge is really looking at how literacy comes to life in the UW-Madison School of Education, and how our teacher education students understand what is being taught to them. We can articulate the coursework and the concepts that are being taught, and really thinking about what these future teachers might need moving forward as they become teachers of literacy in our schools. The third charge is to review and become familiar with the best evidence that's out there. The empirical evidence that's out there about the most effective ways to teach literacy, the ways to teach literacy so that we are closing the gaps that exist. We get after the gaps early and that make a difference in the achievement of students. And this is pre-K through 12. We know, and Gabby shared the data, that some of our older students are also struggling readers. So this early literacy task force is also looking at how do we develop teachers who are teaching children in middle school and high school who may be struggling readers. We can't hold them back from rigorous coursework. We won't hold them back from participating in honors and in AP coursework. We want to help to support our teachers so that those students can access that rigorous curriculum and be successful. And then the final charge is to make recommendations to both the district and to the School of Education about how we can work together to strengthen literacy instruction and the teacher education programs. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the task force. So we have 14 task force members, both from the University of Madison and also our district and the community. As I said before, I have the honor to co-chair this task force with Dr. John Diamond from UW-Madison. And I don't know what we would do without Dr. Jen Shepke to help us project manage this work, and also without Donald Dantzler, who is from our research and evaluation department and who is heading up our data support for the team. We started meeting in February. We meet Friday afternoons from 2 to 4. And as I said before, we're utilizing a subcommittee structure now to advance the work in each of those charge areas. We have been really clear about keeping to our core value of keeping equity and children at the center and not allowing ourselves to get caught up in politics or other ideological thinking. Each of the subcommittees are moving forward with their components using an interactive process between meetings of gathering data, bringing it back, getting feedback, analyzing the current context, reflecting, and then going back to work. And again, just to reiterate, the recommendations that are being put forth will be supported by empirical evidence. And we want these recommendations to lead for and make a difference, increasing achievement for all of our students. Next slide, please. So as we've mentioned, there is a wide impact of this work from 4K to 12th grade. And in a little bit here, we're going to have Colleen Wattoon talk a little bit about what's happening with full day 4K. And I also want to articulate a little bit here about what's happening with summer school and then secondary. So if you remember way back when we talked about this in the beginning, we talked about strengthening that transition from 4K to 5K. And Colleen has been working diligently with our community partners in our summer semester on this. And we're excited to have a reinvigorated experience for rising 5-year-olds this summer. We're really focusing on this text-based teaching and learning K through 12, which, as I said, is about building vocabulary, using grade level vocabulary, and not holding children back because maybe they aren't reading at grade level right now. We also want to take a deep look at increasing the number of reading certified staff so that these folks are able to diagnose and provide intervention in instruction. Right now, as I've seen over the years, this is the first time we have focused explicitly on a strong core and less so on this notion of intervention. We have to do both. Of course, we have to do both, but our primary focus is around a strong, rigorous core instruction. We're also working with secondary reading coaches, interventionists, our English as a second language teacher, and our special education staff around the science of reading, making sure that those folks have evidence-based tools and resources. And then, despite the fact that we are in a virtual environment, we have started to implement grade level screeners, short probes, short point in time screeners that give us insight into specific skill areas. Next slide, please. Colleen, I'm going to pass it over to you to talk a little bit about what's happening in our development of the full day 4-year-old programs.
And I'm just here to reiterate and share my excitement for the investment in early learning. This is the first time that the district is really focused, conscious investment in early learning with our full day 4K expansion. As well as we are making sure, I'm so excited that letters training is not going to skip over 4K, that when we are focusing in with our early literacy, we are understanding that our learning begins with our youngest learners, and those not only begin with our 4K students, but we also want to make sure that we are making connections with our community partners, and we want to have a collaborative community outreach with our early literacy liaison position, connecting birth to 3 and our play and learn programs, also to be able to wrap them all together for early learning. Next slide, Barb. And again, just reiterating the excitement around full day 4K and being able to offer that full day 4K program in 16 different elementary schools in English and bilingual programming. Next slide. Is this
Good evening.
Leah?
So, yep, I'm here. Through the ESSER II funds, MMSD now has access to $18.9 million. These reimbursable funds will be available between May of 2021, so next month, to September of 2023. From these funds, we will be using some to support reading in MMSD. So $9.5 million will be spent on instruction and innovation, specifically focusing on the Big Ideas campaign, with reading being one of the 6 focus areas within that campaign. And I will talk more about that campaign on the next slide. $4 million of the ESSER II funds is earmarked to fund ongoing virtual and instructional platforms such as Lexia, Core 5, PowerUp, Ingenuity, because we are still in a global pandemic and we need to remain flexible and provide universal access to these important platforms, since we do not know what the future of COVID-19 holds. Next slide, please. So we have been given the opportunity of a lifetime, using $9.5 million of the $18.9 million that we have access to through ESSER II funds. MMSD launched the Big Ideas campaign last Monday, April 19th, across our community as a way to drive transformational change in reading and beyond. Next slide, please. So the goal of this Big Ideas campaign, which I want to give a shout out to Ollie for joining the design team on this work, is to find and prototype ideas that will accelerate learning and close historical gaps in MMSD. So in order to find these big ideas that will hopefully transform MMSD, we are asking staff, students, and community members to submit ideas by this Wednesday, April 28th, that focus on 6 areas. 1, accelerating learning and creating enriching learning opportunities, improving reading, use of technologies, so beyond hardware and software, thinking engineering and problem solving, supporting social emotional learning, mental health and wellness. We know where we are at right now with COVID-19 after over a year, and we really want to focus on supporting our mental health of our students, help with post-secondary planning, and then leveraging the arts, knowing that arts are often cut early when there are budget shortfalls. We want to leverage the arts and how our students can transform their learning experience in those ways. We are so excited to provide this incredible opportunity to dream big and transform MMSD. We also know that by harnessing our community's creative power and their brilliance, we can find solutions that will positively impact students in MMSD. If you have any other questions about this campaign that launched again last week, Monday, you can visit our website, mmsd.org/big ideas. Next slide, please. And I am going to pass it back to Lisa and Gabi for a discussion about literacy and reading in MMSD.
So thank you. That concludes our formal presentation tonight. Wanted to open up to discussion. Dr. Jenkins, was there anything that you wanted to add to the presentation before we open it up to a larger discussion?
I just wanted to thank the board members. First of all, we've talked about this in terms of being bold. This is one of our bold strategies. This is truly one of our anti-racist strategies. If you want to improve outcomes for children, attack early literacy and beyond, and high quality instruction, to just allow the resources to be able to support our staff in meeting our students where they are and taking them to the next level. This is very exciting. I hope that everyone in our community just heard the enthusiasm from the team and the capacity that we're building to do this, not as an event, but beyond. And this won't be just a one-year commitment. This is something that we know, and working with a lot of the individuals from our community, working with individuals from the university, we're being very intentional in understanding that this has been a historical issue, and now it could be our leverage to moving forward, moving our district forward. So thank you to all the board members and to the community at large, and to all the wonderful people who just presented. Thank you, Lisa, for your leadership on this.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins, and thank you all for that presentation. Nikki, I saw your hand up. You want to start us out?
Absolutely. Lisa, you and I have had plenty of discussions on this. I'm looking forward to ideas that will will help students with disabilities, especially. Right now, their PALs, they are at 15%, the 15th percentile of retention of material, I believe, correct? And that needs to change. I'm hoping that we get a lot of big ideas on that, because right now, what we're doing isn't working, and I'm hoping letters will be part of it. I also hope we can finally find a nonverbal grader, because you and I have had that discussion many times, that just because someone is nonverbal doesn't mean they don't understand the material. It means they just are unable to communicate in a verbal manner. The other thing that I want to state on the early literacy, I've heard a lot on teachers being worried that they won't have time to complete it or have to complete the program over the summer. Could you go into detail on that?
You bet, Nikki. Thank you for asking that question. So we did hear that from teachers, from some staff that were worried, that wanted to complete it, right? They wanted to do it. They loved it. They found so much value in it. And we actually offered our instructional coaches an opportunity to complete that in their own way, the last couple of units. And then after that, the reading interventionists, who often sometimes also have another role in the building, we gave those folks an opportunity to go ahead and complete that next year during Welcome Back. I will say, and Gabi, you have probably the numbers on this, that only 3 people took us up on waiting until the fall, that the rest of them are staying with their cohort. Nikki, you are right, though. It is important with letters that those cohorts stay together and they engage in that bridge to practice, which is also putting what they've learned, into real use with students. So thank you for bringing that up. And we are very sensitive to that and learned as we move into implementation next year. So appreciate the question.
Yes, Lisa, and I just want to confirm, in fact, only 3 staff members asked to pause, but only after Unit 2. They're only pausing for the summer. But then 13 staff members asked to get in. So, yes. So,
wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement around it.
That's great. Thanks, Gabi.
Good no.
Other folks want to participate in the discussion, or Julia and Nanda, I want to make sure that you all want to contribute to the conversation. Fabian, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everybody for the presentation and all the work that's been put into this. I was wondering if folks from the team can talk about some of the findings thus far about improving that 4K to 5K transition.
Colleen, I will hand that one off to you about that transition from 4K to 5K.
Thanks, Lisa. So 4K to 5K transition, we have multiple things that we give elementary schools, as well as we did a research report on 4K to 5K transition with the Madison Education Partnership. What we're trying to do is we're trying to align that transition so that way, no matter where a student attends, whether they attend a school site or they attend a community partner site, the kindergarten teacher that they're attending will be able to see any data and information that they collect in 4K, that the kindergarten teacher would then be able to see that information as well as they would be able to see any information that was gathered through summer school. They would be able to see that information as well. So we're working on creating those systems and aligning those things. Hopefully we will have those, that document and process figured out soon.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Holly. Thank you so much for this excellent presentation. This is really exciting to see this moving forward, and very much appreciate the work of the task force and the work of the staff in getting this moving in a timely manner. I just have a few questions. My first one is about the assessment piece. I would like to hear your views on what tools we're going to use to assess the success of our program. There are limitations to the forward exam, and I think we're phasing out the use of the MAP exam. So I'm just curious what tools we were going to use to assess student achievement, and also how we're addressing bias in those tools, because we know that many of these tools are biased towards different races and income levels. So just your thoughts on assessment.
So I can start with that, and then maybe Gabi or Jackie, you can jump in with your work with ANET. So I am with you, Chris. The MAP and the forward exam are not going to be the best tools in the beginning here to assess what's happening. We do have, and I think I mentioned it, we replaced AIMSWED with FastBridge. We use that both as a tool for general intellectual for students with to identify students with disabilities, and it is our PALS replacement. So that is made up of very short probes in specific skill areas that teachers can administer, special ed assistants, EAs could administer it, and it's skill-based. And they're very short, and actually some of the ANET formative assessments, right? When we started with ANET 3 years ago, we didn't have any formatives that were standards aligned. And I believe that probably Jackie and Sarah might have some information to share about that in just a second. I would also say, Chris, some of our data is also about how staff are doing, right? With learning the science of reading and how they're doing with the training. And Gabi has been masterful at sending, I think it's weekly updates around what teachers have completed the training, what teachers have completed the units, who's falling behind for whatever reason, how can we reach out and support them. And I can see some of our metrics for this work around the science of reading centering on how our staff members are doing, what are the indicators that what staff members are using are actually showing up in the classroom. So I think it's about developing our teachers, and then also ultimately, right, getting kids to read. So Jackie, let me just maybe turn it over to you a little bit. If you could talk a bit about how you guys have been using the meaningful assessments that help you know what children are learning.
Thanks, Lisa. Yes, we at Gompers, we are in our second year using the ANET assessments, and we just recently completed our A3 cycle. which was a really exciting teaching and learning cycle that before we administered the assessment, we went through and we did a preview of the assessment and then the deep skills that we were asking children to do that were aligned to the standards from reading and writing. Then we moved into then talking about what are the complex pieces of that text we want students to be able to access. So it's really about then talking about what did we learn from the assessment that students knew how to do, and what are our next instructional moves. Because I think in the past, by the time students encountered a forward assessment, it was the first time they had seen something like that. And I'm not saying that it is a biased assessment. However, we have discrepancies in how our students are achieving. So we want to support all our learners to receive and have opportunities to engage in that level of work. And the ANET assessment has been an amazing tool to help us be able to do that at Gompers so far. We're still on the journey, but the ANET assessment has been a really great assessment tool.
May I jump right in because you guys are singing my song here with assessments. The strategy really is as follows. We want grade level instruction at the rigor of the standards to not be an event. We want it to be what happens every day, all day, every day. So when the kiddos are confronted with an assessment that is going to ask them to work at a rigor, it's not going to be anything extraordinary, because that is the work that we have engaged in. And definitely the way in which we get there is understanding with a great level of depth what are the standards, having access to great level texts that are rich, that are I'm not going to say the word that everybody's thinking because they are engaging. And we most definitely want our students to be able to decode those texts so that they can break the meaning. So it really goes down to ensuring that daily instruction is very, very rigorous and that we're making true the science of reading for our students. I believe that if the board has an appetite to continue the conversation assessments, perhaps a future opportunity to engage with Dr. Racine Gillis would be a phenomenal idea because she's a superstar.
Thank you so much for that. We often use the word rigor, and I think that's important, but we don't often use the word joy when we're talking about learning in students and reading. And it's really hard to get a student to become a reader if they're not experiencing joy in the classroom and in the books that they're reading. I'd love to hear more about that in general, particularly with 4K and 5K and how we're using this change in our reading approach alongside with possibly more play-based learning approaches to ensure that there is joy happening, and as kids get older, to ensure that we're giving them, really engaging and exciting books so they can find joy in reading. And another piece of that is something that I've heard repeatedly from parents and teachers is taking the joy out of reading, and that is the continued use of Lexia, which children tend not to enjoy using, and is not actually an evidence-based practice. The Lexia Corporation has published a lot of data saying that their program works, but the scant literature that's external doesn't actually show very good results. So one piece of it is what are we doing with this new curriculum to inspire joy in learning and in the classrooms? And are we going to be looking at phasing out things like Lexia that may not be based in evidence, and we're not hearing from families and staff that actually inspires kids to love reading and become readers?
Can I just share a brief recent anecdote? I think that as a district, we have to be careful of having joy and rigor as two mutually exclusive things.
Thank you.
We can find love and support children in both, and it is important that we do that art and dance of teaching and learning to make things be both joyful and rigorous. For example, with our EL curriculum, I have a whole group of second graders currently who want to be paleontologists because through their reading and writing, they are committed to becoming paleontologists while they're also learning vowel teams in their skills block. So I think it is a really fancy art and dance.
Yes, thank you so much,
Jackie,
Jackie.
thank you for that. I was a principal for 11 years, and boy, I saw some children in some classrooms that were struggling to read, and they didn't have much joy in reading because they struggled and they didn't have the skills, and we didn't know as much then as we do now. So thank you, Jackie, for lifting that. I think the engagement piece is something, and You know, that we want all of our children to see themselves as readers and see themselves as successful and be able to select books that they love, right? And books that they want to read independently and books that they might want to share with their peers in class. And just in terms of Lexia, just want to remind the board that when we adopted Lexia, we had no other tool to use around foundational skills. And Lexia has never been intended to be a core program. It was intended to be a standards aligned, independent program to support learning. And I would imagine as we start to select high quality materials around foundational skills and then high quality materials for core, that of course we want to reevaluate the tools and the resources that we have so that we're certain that we put the best resources and tools in front of students.
Are we talking about using Lexia at the 4K level as we move into full day 4K?
I'm sorry, Chris, I couldn't quite hear you. I think you said something about 4K.
Yeah, are we talking about using Lexia in 4K as we move into full day 4K programming?
Colleen?
At this time, we're not using Lexia at 4K. Additional training would need to be done and other things. And we really, at the 4K level, we really want students to be focusing in on manipulating things with their hands in the classroom. We know that 4-year-olds learn best when they're actively playing and engaging with materials. So we want them to be using their senses and engaging with those materials. So at this time, we do not want them, we have not gone the route down Lexia at this time.
I fully support that, and I love hearing about kids using their hands and building those skills. I also really love the answer Jackie gave about rigor and joy existing side by side. That was beautiful, and thank you. Final question, I'm just curious, what's the timeline for the task force to bring forward recommendations?
Chris, can you say that again?
The task force is presumably putting together recommendations about where we're headed with reading curriculum, and I'm just wondering, what's our timeline?
So the task, are you talking about the partnership with UW, Chris?
Yeah, am I just mixing up functions here? Am I getting it wrong?
No, you're fine. The task force is working through the end of June. At the end of June, there should be a recommendation that could come to the board for discussion sometime after that.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this presentation. I'd just like to say that I'm as enthusiastic as you all are about seeing this launch and that we've been able to move forward faster than we initially intended. I kind of see this running parallel with the strategic or the task force work. And we're already sort of defining and ready to go and launching all of this work. Do you see them coming forth with recommendations on like how to do this comprehensively, the metrics and the evaluation? Or, I mean, they're obviously not going to come to us and tell us to do letters because we've already sort of launched and are in that direction. So I'm just kind of curious how you see those, they're running parallel right now. So are they going to be more involved with metrics and evaluation, or how do you see that working, Lisa?
So that's a good question, Chris. I know that each subcommittee is working on a set of recommendations for MMSD and for UW-Madison. I think what we'll see is something like a Venn diagram, right? They're each working on recommendations for their MMSD or the district. There's going to be some themes that come out, and I think we will see in some of those things what are in some of those recommendations, what are right authentic ways maybe to evaluate, what are authentic ways to measure. It's why we have Donald working with us to really study and look at that data. But I have a feeling, Chris, that that is going to be the middle of that Venn diagram. Like, where do these pieces come together and how will we know that we're making a difference?
Great, I'm excited to see what they come up with and how they're ready to guide that. So thank you very much for that. Just a quick follow-up on the map test. I wasn't aware that we had decided to get rid of that yet. And I think, you know, the one thing about math compared to like the forward that is sort of focused very much grade level, math is adaptive, so it allows you to measure where kids are at and then figure out where to go from there. So is there another assessment that does that we're looking at instead?
So we convened our comprehensive assessment system before we all left school last March 13th. And what we were doing then was looking at the gaps and the overlaps and the redundancies in the system. And we didn't want to pull anything out at that time that left us with a gap in the system that we already have. I do think we've learned about some things during the pandemic that can help inform that again. That group needs to come back together. We need to take a look at that again under the leadership of Dr. Jenkins. And also, as we reimagine what our research accountability and data use department is going to focus on moving forward next year. So I look forward to you know, a robust conversation about that and learning from what we've done in the past and what might be some better tools, right, that can maybe be implemented in different settings and with different groups of students.
Great, thank you. I'll look forward to that continuing work and continuing discussion then. Is this the spot to ask a question about the big idea going forward? Okay, very excited about this. I've heard excitement in the community about this opportunity, but running on a very short timeline because the submissions are due on April 28th. Can you clarify how detailed the proposals have to be in this first phase to be considered? Just so the community better understands what level we're looking at for, is it Wednesday?
For Wednesday, yeah. And we are on a short timeline just because of when DPI needs MMSD to submit the preliminary proposal for using these funds. So the online submission form, it asks, you know, what is the evidence? What is the need? What is the evidence around around this need? What is the idea to target said need? So giving detail about this idea, it needs to be detailed enough so that the grant committee can actually kind of conceptualize and understand what the idea is. I had an email today from someone asking that same question, and I didn't know what they were talking about. And so I just said, look, if I don't know, there's probably others on the committee that aren't going to know, give some detail, attach an image or a video that might help explain the idea in more details. We are looking for accountability metrics. So if we were to build this idea out, how would we know it's successful? And then we are asking for kind of a rough budget so that the grant selection committee has an idea of where we are in our funding, as well as when Dr. Jenkins and the other panelists have a look at the 20 ideas that move to the semifinal round, have a better sense of what they are funding. We do know that we are not across our community budget experts, and so our accounting department will be supporting individuals and kind of fleshing their ideas out a little bit more.
Okay.
There is, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna ask, if a project is selected, will they have time to flesh out the idea more, and will it be another proposal that they submit to you, or does it all go off of this first proposal?
So the first, if an idea is selected, a member of the grant committee will also be following up to ask further questions, and then they will be supported in building a pitch deck. And so they will have someone to support them with that. It will be a 3-minute presentation to give more information about their ideas. And then if their idea is one of the 10 selected in the final round, they will be supported in building out the idea, being connected to resources, to build out their ideas, support with data collection, so that we are not just leaving them to fend for themselves.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, we're excited.
Ananda?
Yeah, thank you so much, President Ali Modro. I have a couple of questions. One is regarding the big idea. That's super exciting. Understanding that so much of this idea would have to be sort of a long-term systems change. What does it look like for year 2 and year 3 in regards to staff allocation, funding allocation? What are you all envisioning?
Great question. So the first, following liberatory design methodology, the first part of this phase would be the building and testing. And so small scale testing, looking really at the desirability evidence around an idea, and then also feasibility. And if an idea is actually showing proof of concept, then we have set aside funds to actually support scaling an idea. So we don't want to take an idea and say it's in every school across MMSD, because we don't know how it's going to actually impact students, and we want to make sure ideas have a positive impact. We also know that ideas are going to go through their own kind of building cycles. We say build, measure, learn. And so as they test out in a school or in our community, and they're learning about, oh, students aren't liking this, or this isn't kind of speaking to them, or there's some feasibility, it allows the team that is working on this idea to actually make some important adjustments, but not necessarily throwing the entire idea out. And so hopefully by the time we get to December and beginning of January of 2022, we would have a much better idea of proof of concept of the idea.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was really helpful. What is your all's thinking if the idea is an idea that comes with our own like internal changes? How are you accommodating for continuous improvement internally? What does that look like for you all?
In terms of staff professional development, or as
in terms of tools that we use, in terms of structures that are in place to support the idea, in terms of policies or practices? What if the idea is to change or will be sort of clashing to our ways of doing things?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that depending on what the idea is, having a team of people around that idea to support both the internal structures, the way that Rocket has kind of moved forward with their work is we have a council of members that are able to support a team in addressing all sorts of different systems and structures, their own internal work. We use a lot of the tools that come out of liberatory design to help with that internal reflection. When I was working with a team from Toki Middle School, every 2 weeks we met and we reflected on what are we seeing from our students, what are we learning from them, how can we make adjustments so that we stay student-centered all the way through. And so I think that, you know, with these 10 ideas, really continuing with those structures that really place the student or the desired client in the center of this work.
Super excited that you all are implementing liberatory practices. So thank you so much for your answers. I have one more question. Thank you. I have one more question for Dr. Bell. In your presentation, you shared first of all, thank you for the excitement on the presentations that made my heart really warm. You mentioned the complexities of what happens in third grade, and it's really interesting because I have experienced that personally as well. I am curious that, you know, understanding the presentation, understanding the sort of the holistic strategies that we're implementing, but I'm curious about what would it look like a targeted strategy to all third grader teachers at MMSD, where we provide a much greater level of support in that second grade transition and then that third grade transition. is that what something that you all are thinking about? And if so, how would that be actualized? I didn't see Gabby going in, and so I don't know if she heard me.
Thanks, Ananda. I'm not sure I see Gabi on the screen here, but let me try this, and maybe Carletra, then maybe you can add on to that. What I think will happen in the training around the science of reading, specifically around letters, right? There's power in this notion of taking the training in cohorts. And I am hopeful that as we move through this training and teacher teams come together that have gone through the training as a cohort and they've moved to this bridge to practice piece, right? That's the piece around reflection, going back, trying something different, looking at the data. I think it's a matter of really institutionalizing that notion of reflecting and adjusting with data that you've learned, or data around what children have learned in the classroom, and being really thoughtful about how we use that data. And I think those targeted practices, if those can become routine, and if we can see assessments as not point in time, oh my gosh, we're losing instructional minutes, but more of a process where we're learning about children and gathering information to make them better readers, boy, that would be some amazing work if we can get folks beyond that, and specifically that second to third grade transition. As those teachers go through the training together, there could be some real power in that. Carletra, is there anything else that you've seen or anything that you're thinking about as an answer to that?
Yeah, thank you. So I think that's exactly right, Lisa. In addition to that, the power of the way and the intentionality and the collaboration behind this plan is that it's not just one or two schools, but it's all of our schools. And so Jackie and Sarah are a perfect example of that, of working across schools and across teams to have, again, the reflection on the data, to know how we're going to move forward, and just to have that, that time together as a team, but not just dependent upon the team that's at your building.
Thank you so much, you both. I would just expand just a little bit and maybe a recommendation, because I really want this to be successful, and I truly believe that should be a fantastic targeted strategy for our school district. But thinking about adding resources to that grade level, to that team, to this sort of district-wide team, in regards to instructional coaches, in regards to mental health support, in regards to special ed assistance or educational assistance, in regards to any other instructional resource or any other support that we can give to that team. I think that's something that I would love to consider, even if it includes an addition budgetary line item. So, but thank you so much, Lisa, and for your team for this great thinking and bringing this forward.
Thank you for your questions, Ananda. Julia, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for your presentation. It's really exciting. I just had a question. So I guess beyond phonics and basics, I think we were talking about how text-based teaching and learning is part of this new plan, and I wanted to bring up how important I think it is that those texts are exciting and that they're stories and books that kids can relate to, and that even though there are different options that kids can choose because they're excited to engage with those options, right? So like I was thinking I learned in kindergarten through learning phonics. And then after that, I developed vocabulary and wanted to read because I had access to resources, at home and in the classroom, and books that made me want to read. So I guess related to that, it would be great if you could talk a little bit about how your plans, kind of text-based learning and teaching, can relate to joy in reading, especially as you were saying in those lower grade levels, like below third grade.
Sarah or Jackie, do you want to talk a little bit about how important those text sets have been to the work that you're doing around the EL modules aligned to the science of reading?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit. So the EL modules we're using this year are content-based, and so they're around themes. And I can speak to my K3, the third grade teachers have really brought it up a lot about the engaging texts that come with it. So the texts with this curriculum are trade books that are recommended, and then there's some that are required. So there are already books out there that everybody accesses connected to certain themes. So in third grade, one of the first modules is around problem solving in communities. So they read about problems that communities and students overcome with accessing education. And so they're learning about many different cultures and then applying it and connecting it. And the pandemic this year really allowed for that connection to these other problems because they had to overcome a lot of problems and barriers. So we have seen the kids' engagement in these rigorous texts and the joy because they're able to connect with what they're reading about and then apply it to their own lives. Down at the K level, the first units were all about toys and community building and working together and play. That was a little more challenging virtually in the fall of trying to interact and share, but still the texts were those stories that they love, Llama Llama, Molly Melon, just a lot of variety. And then our librarian has also done an amazing job connecting even more text to their online access of books that connect to those topics. So we've seen high engagement across all the grades right now with the different texts we're using.
Just to add a little bit about the, Julia, you talked about the importance of choice and being able to select a book around a topic. So that each module comes with recommended text sets as well, which we're moving into purchase for students. When we were virtual, we worked on having those able to access virtually through Google Slides and YouTube. And now we're purchasing those materials for kids to have access in the classrooms as well.
Can I just ask, this seems like a very basic question. I'm just wondering, completely curious, like in kindergartens, are there just shelves of books that kids can pick out and like, is there time for them to read them? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we have shelves and shelves of books. There's a lot of read aloud. So they're hearing stories, they're looking at stories. There's big books that they've read that they can go back into on their own time and open them up and read them again and read the pictures. So the classrooms are filled with books for kids to access.
Thank you. Just wondering.
Thank you so much for your questions, Julia. All right, I think that concludes the discussion portion. We're about 2 hours into the meeting, so I want to take a brief 4-minute break, and we'll come back at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, we're only at 15% proficiency in the table.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Barb, I can see the calendar event that says slide, that meeting will resume, but not the slide.
Work group met on April 12th, and we talked about the 21-22 budget, including early budget action on a proposed virtual learning program that we're going to be acting on tonight. We talked about community feedback and planning progress on the building projects at our 4 comprehensive high schools, Capitol High, and the new elementary school. And finally, we discussed 2 new financial policies for the board, which we will be acting on momentarily. But the big news is that tonight we are excited to formally introduce the draft preliminary budget for the 2021-22 school year. I want to start with many, many thanks to Kelly for her work. The board and administration have been working together on this budget since January, and I want to thank Kelly for transforming our ideas and our priorities into a budget that upholds the values in our strategic framework. This budget reflects the feedback that we heard from people across our community throughout the course of the 2020 referenda. Citizens told us loud and clear that they wanted us to invest in equity and they wanted us to invest in our staff and our classrooms. We put together a budget that reflects what we heard. This is a budget our community can feel good about, and that we are truly grateful to our community for supporting public education by approving the referenda. While we don't yet have a budget from the state, we have made carefully informed assumptions about both anticipated revenue and enrollment. Based on these assumptions, we are going to see declining state revenues next year due to COVID-19 impacts on our enrollment. And we would have had to make difficult cuts without the operating referendum. With this additional referendum revenue, we are assuming a very small, just under 1% increase to our operating budget. And because of that, we are able to invest in both equity and our staff. This stability is critical for our students, especially as we transition out of COVID. So there are a lot of things to celebrate in this budget. First, it's a balanced budget, and it does invest in our staff. It includes a full base wage increase of 1.23% and an average total compensation increase of 3.23%. There are no increases in employee health insurance premiums, thanks to the negotiating power of our HR team. The budget also includes investments in excellence and equity designed to close opportunity gaps, and highlights of those equity investments include full day 4K at 8 elementary schools, which represents half of our highest need schools with the greatest percentage of low-income students. Curriculum updates to ensure what we are teaching in MMSD is accurate and culturally relevant. Professional development in evidence-based reading instruction, plus an updated 4K through 5th grade reading curriculum. Daily world language instruction for 7th and 8th graders in all of our middle schools. And restorative justice as part of a holistic approach to safety in our high schools. In the fall, we'll hopefully be moving into a new post-COVID world. However, it is going to take some time to transition out of the pandemic. We need to ensure our schools are safe and all of our students are engaged in high-quality instruction. The budget includes investments in accelerated learning coming out of COVID, as well as continued mitigation strategies to keep everybody safe and healthy. It also includes investments in student social and emotional learning, including more middle and high school counselors and expanded mental health supports at the elementary level. It's important to note that this draft of the budget does not include federal stimulus funds, and these will be added to the budget in June after board deliberations in May. At this point, I'd like to hand this over to Kelly to provide more details about revenue.
Hi, thank you, Chris, very much. So we are excited to release the draft 21-22 preliminary budget to you all tonight via board docs and to our broader community, families, staff, and students via the MMSD website. As Chris said, this draft preliminary budget is reflective of the voice of our community. After hundreds of hours and thousands of responses to our surveys through the referenda process, we have aligned this budget to the voices of our community. And as Chris stated, the November referenda is our only stable, reliable, reoccurring revenue source this year. We can't thank our community enough for supporting the Madison Metropolitan School District and keeping us stable as we move into the 21-22 school year. Our draft operating budget for 21-22 is $445 million. That includes an estimate of $100 per pupil increase from the revenue limit. We have not yet received the state biennium budget, so this is an estimate. We are hopeful that we will receive that budget by the end of June or mid-July to finalize some of these estimates, move them towards actuals. Still, when tied with the COVID-19 related enrollment revenue loss, this is less than a 1% revenue increase from last year's budget. When including the food service, community service, and facilities fund budgets, the district proposed budget is $500 million. Still, just a 1% increase from the 2021 proposed budget. This is a responsible budget that relies on reevaluating prior year budgets and repurposing existing funds to better and greater use. This budget not only invests the referendum funds in students' accelerated learning and social emotional needs, it reinvests over $7 million to better use for our students. This budget is balanced and it maintains our fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers. Without a state budget, we have a number of state estimates built into the budget. If these estimates play out, we believe we'll be on the high end of our current estimates. So those estimates are a $115 increase for the average homeowner or a 14-cent mill rate. We hope that we can do better than this once we get our October final numbers. At these rates, we are $75 per average homeowner less than we predicted in November, outpacing the referendum impacts. So we are thrilled to be able to bring a budget to this community that not only puts our students first, our equity project first, but also lowers the taxes from our previous November 2020 referendum estimates. We look forward to working with you to get feedback from the community over the next 2 months as we work towards a June vote on this preliminary budget. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Kelly. So as Kelly said, we are moving into the next phase of our budget, which is the community feedback phase before our June 28th budget vote. Here are ways that you can provide input. You can find the budget on the MMSD website. You can do a Google search for MMSD 21-22 budget, or you can go to the homepage and find a link. Once you get to the budget page, there is a link on that page to a budget feedback form. We encourage everybody in the community to submit your feedback via this form. Additionally, if you prefer, you can email the board your thoughts directly about the budget, or you can present them at a number of upcoming board meetings. These include operations work group meetings on May 10th and June 14th, and the regular board meetings on May 24th and June 28th. And on June 28th, we will be holding a budget hearing. The next operations work group meeting is scheduled for May 10th, and we will continue to work on this budget, including an update and discussion about federal ESSER funding. So that's all. Thank you.
items that proceeded through the instruction work group held on April 5th, 2021. I move that the Board of Education grant early approval of the following 2021-22 budget request to facilitate timely ordering of long-lead time curriculum to accelerate necessary planning for fall programming. An increase of $840,000 to the 2021-22 Instructional Technology Department staffing, non-personnel budget to launch the district's 2021-22 virtual learning program using local resources.
Second.
Any discussion?
A few questions.
Nikki?
We'll answer more comment than questions, if that's all right. Respect the plan, and I understand the need for virtual learning, and it's a good idea to have something of virtual learning. Problem is, I don't think we have enough information to spend $840,000 taxpayer money without a direct plan. I could see it in October. I could see it at another time. I could see it with federal funds. I'm just not there yet. My other two questions that plague me are, one, how will we determine if we can only take 250 to 500 students? What happens if we have more who wish to take virtual learning? How are we going to select who takes and who doesn't? My second question is, how do we make sure that special ed is done through the virtual academy? Will it operate like every other school? Will it have special accommodations? Will it not? Will social workers have access to the curriculum? Those are questions that are important to answer. I think it's a good first step, and I don't disagree with anyone, but that I'm just explaining why I can't support it at this time.
Thank you, Nikki. Chris?
Thanks, Ollie. So, Malia Jones had a really good op-ed in the Cap Times about exiting from COVID or Pandexit. And I think that this is a piece of our Pandexit strategy at MMSD, that we have to assume that we have some kind of virtual option available next year at all grade levels for students who are, for whatever reason, unable to attend in person as we move towards whatever the future holds post-pandemic. So I'm torn between that need to have a plan and my very, very strong desire to get away from concurrent learning and have a dedicated virtual program that better meets the needs of students online. And the fact that we are approving a pretty large dollar item for a new program that we haven't actually seen a plan for yet. Because of the current situation, because we're on COVID, because we need to offer something to our students, because I'm very passionate about not doing concurrent learning next year, I feel inclined to approve this without that plan. However, I just want to restate some things, some of which I've already said, that this is just for 1 year, that if this is going to become a more permanent program, it comes back to us next year with a complete plan, following board policy for starting new magnet schools or new programs like that. But this is going to replace concurrent instruction in our high schools. That not only will this provide a safe alternative to in-person instruction for students and families who need that kind of safe alternative, but also for teachers who might be medically fragile and looking for an opportunity in the district to be able to teach online into the fall. I anticipate we will receive a plan for this program before the June vote, which is really important. And I'm also encouraged to hear that we're not planning on layoffs this year, which also helps me support this diverting of funding into a virtual program for the fall. Dr. Jenkins, I don't know if you want to comment on any of those things I just said, or?
Well, I will on the plan, which we had mentioned, Dr. McCray has shared with you guys at our previous meeting that he was coming back in June. I think some of the things that you raised there, we have also considered, and we do know during this time we have to pivot and be ready, because no one knows, as you heard Dr. Friedrich say, what's really going to happen in the fall, and we have to be ready. As I've been out speaking to the secondary principals, and they're saying clearly right now what's being indicated, students coming back, not knowing what's going to happen in the fall, we need to be ready. Everyone around us also preparing for something very similar. This is a retention strategy on one hand, but it has multiple opportunities to continue to provide various pathways for our students just to have high quality learning. And you mentioned some of them yourself in terms of the students being medically fragile and other reasons alike, and what we owe the pandemic, but also for our staff. So totally, we'll come back in June with the laid out plan in terms of where we are. And we're just pivoting right now to meet the needs of our students and our staff.
Sabian, I saw your hand. I also saw that Dr. McCray joined us. Dr. McCray, did you want to add on quickly before we move on to the next question?
I do. First and foremost, Dr. Jenkins, thank you for saying all of that you stated. But I do want to just kind of highlight one of the things that Nikki brought up, which is the need for special ed students. And I just want to be mindful to remind everyone just what Chris stated, that this is just for 1 year. And part of it being for 1 year, it is a virtual learning program, and that we are working in concert with the schools to provide all of the services that students will normally have. We are not excluding any student because of any limitations. And that the other main thing is when we're talking about the 200 to 250 students, we are really hoping that this is an opportunity for students to decide that this is just the best setting for them. And we are leading with student voice. And so because of that, we just want to make sure like our role is to support students just in a new environment, but provide them high quality and rigorous instruction.
Thank you so much, Dr. McCray.
And I forgot to add too, that we are working with our teachers and administrators on this program. So we're working closely with MTI and APP in the infancy of what we're trying to develop, realizing that it's beyond just a retention strategy for students and staff, but a viable option for many.
And including, and one last thing, I'm sorry, and I just want to highlight this. We are meeting to have additional conversations for the 4K through 5th grade option on what that will look like. So when we return in June, we will have a laid out plan, not just a 6th through 12th plan, but a 4K through 12 plan for the fall program for next year.
That was a very important note. I'm glad you added that on. Thank you so much, Dr. McCray. Board Member Castro?
Yeah, thank you. I just have a few comments. Thank you, Chris, for the comments that you provided. I think, no doubt, no matter what, this will be a pilot program this year. I think looking forward, I think that we will have to, I think being realistic, this will have to be a permanent fixture in our district. And I think that there are a lot of good opportunities here, should we do it right, with the community to, make the system fit the needs of students versus students fitting the needs of the system. I do think that even before the pandemic, there would have been a demand for something like this, especially for our secondary students, juniors and seniors, who are out wanting to get work experience. So I think this can allow more flexibility, but also allow us to better serve students who are English language learners when we think about scaling, and better serve the needs of students in special education. So I think this will certainly looking forward to the plan that we received, I believe in May or June, and then reviewing the data and results over the next school year.
Thank you so much, Board Member Castro. Board Member Morelli, I see your hand.
Thank you so much, President Muldrow. Thank you so much, Dr. McCray, for everything you have done for the school district this past year. You have been extremely flexible. Your oversight on the entire transition to virtual learning has been beyond what I would expect of any educator across the state of Wisconsin. Madison definitely trailblazed on among others, other districts at the same size in regards to our transition, in regards to our support, in regards to providing the technology needed for our students and families. this ask feels to me a continuation of your work, a continuation of what we need to be doing, understanding where our community was, a year ago, and where we are today, and the many uncertainties that is still to come. And so I really appreciate your foresight. That's the word that I was looking for. The foresight that you've been having all along the ways. And I'm just incredibly grateful to all the amazingness that you have shared with us. I think there are no words in English or in Portuguese or in Spanish that could express my deep gratitude for the humanity of all our students in the school district. What you have done, the amount of hours that you have put in the school district, your heart and your worry about every student, 27,000 students and their families, problem solving every single barrier that we had. There's there's going to be ever words. We will always be forever in debt for the magnitude of your work, and for leading the team, and for leading our school district. So thank you so much, and thank you again for asking what you're asking, and I fully support your initiative and your continued work.
Thank you so much, Board Member Morelli.
I suppose one last thing I just want to highlight that Dr. McCrae did win the Wisconsin Policy Forum Award for Excellence Under Pressure as well, so just to highlight that.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, I'm wondering if we have further discussions that folks want to. Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 6-1.
Thank you.
All right, action items that proceeded through the Operation Work Group held on April 12th, 2021. I move that the Board of Education approve a resolution authorizing the adoption of a policy for designating public depositories as set forth in the documents prepared for the regular Board of Education meeting dated April 26th, 2021.
Second.
Thank you, Chris. Any discussion? Xavier?
I think when we look at this budget top to bottom, some of the things that we were able to pull off and here through a really difficult year, I think it's a strong document that we can just build upon as we go further, so.
Any other discussion? Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
I move that the Board of Education approve a resolution authorizing the adoption of a post-issuance compliance policy for tax exempt and tax advantage obligations and continuing disclosure as set forth in the documents prepared for the regular Board of Education meeting dated April 26th, 2021.
Second, Nikki Vanderboom.
Thank you, Nikki. Any discussion? Julia, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
All right. right, now we're on to the consent agenda. I move that the Board of Education adopt and approve all of the motions set forth in section 10 of the electronic agenda prepared for the April 26, 2021 regular school board meeting, exactly as said motions are written by voting affirmatively on this motion. A board member expresses his or her affirmative vote on each of the motions consolidated hereby, subject to any express separation that have been made by any member of the school board.
Second.
Thank you, Chris. Any separations? Any discussion? I'm sorry, Chris Schmidt.
Yeah, I just wanted to separate out, let me see if I can find it. 10.34.
All right, separating out 10.34. Any other discussion or separation? All right, Julia, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Chris, would you like to speak to?
Yes, I would like to speak to 10.34.
Okay.
This is for the purchase of some trucks, snowplow packages, just looking at our operations. And I just wanted to pull this out to say thank you to Chad Weezy. I feel like over the years you have taken our operations and our equipment and made us a proactive plan for dealing with replacement as we go, so we aren't constantly in an emergency situation with our operations. Oh, Chad is there. Hi. And just wanted to say thanks for that. And just if going forward and before you leave, if we can make sure that there's we have an understanding of sort of the timeline we're on for all these different things in replacement and where this kind of replacement puts us in a proactive way.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you are right. If board members haven't noticed, over the last 5 years, we no longer have rusted out vans with tires falling off on the belt line, and we are in a place that now, just with this purchase, that our fleet has finally turned after a 5-year plan, that we finally have some vehicles that have trade-in value when we actually turn these back in. And it took us 5 years to get there. And it's actually a really good spot to be, that we're no longer having very costly repairs for these vehicles just to keep them on the road. They're safer, more fuel efficient, and we're in a much better place. And I certainly should thank both Becky Mender in our business and accounting department and Kelly Ruppel, who have assisted in making sure that we had the appropriate budget put in the right spot. So I appreciate you calling that out. Of all of these consent items, that was not the one I was expecting, but appreciate the kind words.
Thank you, Chris Schmidt. Any other questions or conversation around that item? All right. I move that the board purchase 5 2021 Ford F-250 Super Duty trucks with Boss snowplow packages and 3 2021 Transit 350 vans with medium height roofs.
Second.
I'm sorry.
Second, Nikki?
You have to finish the motion.
Oh, I thought it was, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, what else would I need within the motion?
The total cost amount there.
Okay. So the total cost of $86,000.
Sorry. And 10.2.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, getting.
There you go. So, medium height.
I'm sorry, that's gonna be 300.
Take your time.
Thank you. I move that the Board of Education award the purchase of 5 2021 Ford F-250 Super Duty trucks with Boss snowplow packages and 3 2021 Transit 350 vans with medium height roofs at a total cost of $308,300 to Kaiser Ford with funding from the 2021 Building Service Operating Budget.
Second, Nikki.
Any discussion? All right, Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Other items of business proposed to be considered under section 10, none for this meeting.
Can you skip to 13 if you like?
Thank you. Other reports to the board, City of Madison Education Committee, and Chris Gomez-Schmidt, that's coming from you tonight.
Yes, just a quick update. The committee met on Wednesday, April 14th. There were two main topics on the agenda. There was a follow-up discussion on the digital inclusion that we have been discussing. A new city digital inclusion task force has been created that will, the work will start in late April, early May, and Fabian Capture will be representing MMSD on this initiative. It's going to be looking at, on a large scale, how to increase access to reliable and affordable internet across the city. This directly affects many MMSD families, as we found out this year, and will continue to be an ongoing important issue for supporting learning access for students across the city. The second topic that we discussed was youth engagement and re-engagement in MMSD and during out-of-school time. I think the committee members from the city, from the district, from the county all recognize the importance of, with the spring and summer and next fall coming up, having definitely a robust choice of activities to keep youth engaged in our communities is important. And kind of defining what the options are for collaboration between the district, city, and county based on what programming is available and where the gaps are for programming. And so we're going to continue that discussion at our next meeting in May.
Thank you, Chris Gomez-Schmidt. Student Senate, Julia?
Yeah, thank you. For Student Senate, we are meeting again soon. The Mental Health Committee is working on a campaign for students to become more aware of the in-school mental health resources that are available to them. And then our Anti-Racism Committee is working on analyzing data that they received from a survey that they recently sent out. And then we also have our upcoming Student Senate elections that are going to be held this month, or next month. So for candidates for the president of Student Senate, we have Gordon Allen running unopposed from East High School. And then for board rep, so who'll be joining after I leave, we have candidates Nama Pandy from West High School and then Tobias Lee from Memorial. So keep you updated on that, but all of that's very exciting for us.
Thank you so much, Julia. Madison School and Community Recreation, MSCR Advisory Committee, Nikki?
Yes, we have not met in person yet. We are supposed to, I believe, be the third week of May or early June. I do not have the date that I will email the board as soon as I do. We've ceased meeting during the pandemic because of low turnout on Zoom meetings of only 2 to 3 people. So therefore, it was put off until we could meet in person. Right now, I believe we're just waiting on a few people to get vaccinated.
All right, thank you so much for that update, Nikki. Other business, I move that the Board of Education formally approve the area within MMSD boundaries that is included within the proposed attendance area on the map provided by the Classical Academy as set forth in the documents prepared for the April 26, 2021 regular board meeting for the purposes of MMSD's provision of transportation for the Classical Academy students who reside within the MMSD boundaries and otherwise meet board policy as statutory requirements for the receipt of transportation via Yellow Vest, parent contract, or Madison Metro Pass as appropriate.
Second.
Thank you, Nikki. Any discussion? Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. I move that the Board of Education approve a resolution authorizing the redemption of taxable general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2012B, Qualified Zone Academy Bond Direct Payments dated March 21st, 2012, as set forth in documents prepared for the regular meeting dated April 26th, 2021.
Second.
Thank you, Chris. Any discussion? Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. I move that the Board of Education establish a 12-person committee for the purposes of renaming Memorial High School and designating Floyd Rose as the chairperson as set forth in the documents prepared for the regular meeting of the Board of Education dated April 26, 2021. I further move that 2 people be designated as alternates should the need arise as set forth in the documents prepared for the regular meeting dated April 26, 2021.
Second, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki. Any discussion?
Chair, would you like to read those names?
I feel that I would massacre some of these names.
That's okay, never mind. Did not mean to put you on the spot.
But I appreciate that. Thank you, Nikki. Any other need for discussion? Thank you, Chris Gomez-Smith.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify the process going forward for the public. I think in the last few times that we have used this policy to rename schools, it has been done at the elementary level, and high school is a much more complex and has many more, I would say, stakeholders involved, and I would just like to clarify the process going forward and really encourage us to figure out how we make sure that we are including stakeholder voices, which include, you know, current students and parents, staff, alumni, the community, you know, across Madison in this discussion. And so just sort of wanted to definitely clarify that process going forward and how we're going to do that. I think we did a really good job of engaging the community when we were discussing redoing our buildings and doing work to upgrade our building facilities. And I think this is important going forward for this community and the identity of this community. You know, I'd just like to say that, you know, this is brought forward by a student. It's an important conversation for our community to have around a request to change the name of James Madison Memorial School that was named after one of our country's founding fathers, who was also a slave owner. And it's an important discussion for our community to have. And I've been thinking a lot about how at the high school level, a community identity develops not only around a name, but around the experience that students have and how they become part of that school community during the time that they're there. And so I want to say thank you to the 12 people who have agreed to serve on the community, on the committee, and figure out the process going forward so that we engage all the stakeholders at Memorial and beyond.
Chris, are you directing clarifying the process at somebody specifically?
Yeah, well, I guess I don't even know who the staff member is that is assigned to sort of leading this. I know that when we renamed the last school, Carlectra Stanford, I believe, was the person who led that process and supported that as staff. Have we made that decision? Who will lead this process from our staff?
Yes, Chris, as this is a high school, Dr. Pryor will be leading this renaming effort.
Great, thank you. Hi, Dr. Pryor.
Hi, Chris.
And then can you just explain like the next steps and how this will move forward with the committee convening and timeline?
Barb, do you want me to take that?
Sure, there's some in the public content of the board docs item, there's a little bit more for the members of the community about where this goes next. So according to the policy, the website will be updated with the proposed names, which I believe we have maybe over 25 at this point. It's been open for the last 30 days, so there are a great many names that have been proposed. So the public will be invited to comment on those proposed names over the next 30 days. And after that time, the board-appointed ad hoc committee will convene once the 30-day period ends for getting input on those names. And then the ad hoc committee will begin their work to review the proposals and do whatever they need to do for public input. They will be able to decide how they want to get student voice and all other voices heard.
Sherry and Dr. Pryor, before you chime in, I just want to ask Chris, did Barb answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's a lot more clear than I think when we started out. And so I appreciate that, and I think that will help the community in understanding what the next steps are. Thank you.
Dr. Pryor or Sherry, if you want to chime in, and then Vivian Castro, I see your hand.
No, I think Sherry covered it all. I was just going to lean back on the correspondence that I think has already been shared with all board members in regards to the process. And if not, we would just make sure that we get a copy of that framework to each and every one of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pryor. Sherry, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think we've covered the next steps.
All right, thank you so much. I saw Sabian and then Ananda, I see you.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to highlight that this has been something that's been in the works for quite some time now. The Black Student Union at Memorial High School has been putting forth proposals for years now. It's just that boards in the past have not taken those up. We have, and so looking forward to seeing the work of this ad hoc.
Thank you, Board Member Castro. Ananda and then Julia, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question maybe for Sherry. If we are voting on accepting those nominations, what if we're not in agreement with one of the names? What is the process, Sherry?
You would essentially vote no.
And then
because they're being presented as a slate.
So I wouldn't be able to amend to replace with an alternate?
Not the way the process is set up at this point, and as the process has proceeded with the other renamings.
Well, so here's, I really don't want to delay this. This is a really extremely important decision, but I do think that one of the most important criterias for members of committees to be accepted is that they understand the impact of those names have in the building. And I believe that at least one of the members that have been, one of the names that have been put forward has made public comments on the lack of their understanding on the importance of Black history, the impact on Black students and Black families and Black community members on having a blatant racist name in our schools. So I would like to seek advice, or maybe other board members have some comments to how do we proceed, or maybe Board President Mudro have some recommendations on how to move forward. I really don't want to delay, but I will vote no on this slate, given one of the names of this committee is someone that has made public remarks that are not alignment into what we are actually trying to do, which is having discussions and coming up with names that address the history of racism in Madison and demonstrated in the Madison school buildings.
Permission to speak? Sure.
I'm gonna let Julia speak, just to keep
Oh, I
it
didn't see
in
that.
alignment with.
I apologize,
with that.
Julia.
And before Julia speaks, Ananda, I do wanna acknowledge your concerns. I think they're valid concerns, and I do also wanna say, that the chair of this committee is somebody who takes Black history incredibly seriously. So there is a little bit of balance in there in terms of Floyd Rose, being the executive director of 100 Black Men and them championing the Black History Bowl. I do think board members had a chance to contribute, different folks for different reasons. And so we are looking to strike a balance, but I greatly appreciate you bringing that to the awareness of the board in this conversation. Julia.
Yeah, thank you. Just for different reasons, I do share Ananda's concern about specific committee members. So if we're voting tonight, I would like to abstain.
Julia, I'm sorry, we cannot, I can't hear you.
Okay, I can speak louder.
We can't hear you.
Is this better?
Just a little bit louder.
A little bit louder.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Kind of. Okay. I was just saying for different reasons, I kind of share Ananda's concerns about specific committee members. So if we're voting on it tonight, I think I'd like to abstain.
Thank you, Julia. Nikki?
Just wanted to say I appreciate the concerns Ananda raised. I think in the future we could always look at the process. I think we're bound by the process currently this evening because that's the vote that the policy says is how it's done. I think we can look at that policy in the future. I just don't think we can do it now, but it's an excellent point.
Thank you. Nikki, Ananda?
Well, given that we don't have an unanimous vote, and given that our student representative has concern, I would like to make a motion to delay this vote. And Nikki, we can decide to not vote tonight. We can decide to look at the committee members again and vote on another day.
May I respond, Chair?
Well, there's a motion right now, so I'm like, is somebody seconding that? Okay. So the motion.
For the sake of discussion, can you do that?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Maya.
For the sake of discussion?
For the sake of discussion. For the sake of discussion of the motion.
Mm-hmm.
So the motion's on the floor, it has a second, we can now discuss that motion. Thank you, Maya. And then Nikki, we'll return to you.
My issue is always gonna be, I don't believe it changes the policy. Even if we postpone the vote, I don't believe it changes the policy before the vote itself, because you can't change the rules in the middle of the game. I think going forward, on future votes, I think it's absolutely necessary. I'm just saying, I think this was entered beforehand, and people did list a group of names. I also know Floyd Rose is going to maintain order on that. I've never seen a more fiercely knowledgeable man on either A, Black history, B, history in general. He doesn't allow anyone to push him over. I can't ever see it happening. But that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you for your comments, Nikki. Ananda?
Julia, did you have your hand up before, or okay? I understand what you're saying, Nikki. Since we only have been privy to the names once, at least for me, on the board docs, we didn't have we don't have a chance to discuss on the names. So, and we do get to vote on the names. So given that we are voting on the names, I don't feel comfortable with the at least one of the names that are listed in there. And I do not have any concern with Dr. Rose, but I do have concerns when we are okay with, saying, yeah, let this Black man handle this white racist people in committees. That I do have concern. And to the extent possible, I do want to protect the integrity of the school district and how we handle matters with the intent to become anti-racist. Becoming anti-racist does not mean that we just put a Black person there to take care of all the racist people. It means that we vote in alignment to the anti-racist practices. So I do urge my colleagues to support me on this, and for us to have another discussion on how we're going to move the slate of the Memorial Committee forward.
Sherry, I'm really grateful that you joined us. I want to ask you a question pretty directly about what happens if we delay this and how we would revisit who has been nominated by the board to the committee.
I believe that would have to, in order for the board to discuss it, would have to be an open session. I will note that all the names that are listed for tonight were names that were submitted by other board members. And so there we must tread carefully, because that is the system that was set up, that each board member had the ability to name members to the committee that they thought would be most appropriate. And so while I understand the concerns, we do not want to stifle the voice of anyone, no matter what they believe. I mean, we've set up the committee to be a committee of 12. We've named 2 alternates. And again, if we want to discuss not having a particular name on the list, that will have to be an open discussion.
And I also want to ask, if the chair of the committee finds that a certain person's contribution is unhealthy, the committee itself can address its membership beyond this point. Am I right in that understanding, Sherry, or would they need to come back to us?
Based on the policy, it would be the chair that would need to address that. And that would be you, Ms. Muldrow, to address any issues. I'm sure Mr. Rose would come to you and let you know what those issues are. And again, we are naming 2 alternates. So it could be that we could replace a member with an alternate. And because we're naming those 2 alternates, I'm not certain that we necessarily need to delay the vote.
Thank you. It's very helpful to know that there's the ability to have some level of recourse, so we're not kind of locked in to a dynamic that might not be as healthy or as proactive as we'd like it to be around this particular issue. Is there other discussion? Chris?
I do think we do have to, this is a policy going forward about how these committees get named and how they get formed. I think if we did that, we would have to go back and start from scratch, and I don't know what that does to our timeline. So I can see the process of this policy, and not just how we name committee members to it, but also some timeline things and some of the ways this functions need to be addressed too. So I'd like to see that happen, and planning on that being part of the policy work going forward.
Ananda?
Yeah, thank you for another opportunity to speak to that. And thank you so much, Chris Gomez-Smith, for speaking to this. My concern is it also goes beyond my personal concern. I think that at least one of the people in that committee has made public remarks. So I also have concern with our own methods of ensuring the integrity of what we are actually trying to do in becoming an anti-racist district. I appreciate everyone's comments. Thank you so much, Sherry, for supporting us on this. Again, I really, given that there's two individuals that are not in full support of this committee, given that this committee is extremely important in this process that is extremely new to our district, extremely important. I urge us to delay on this vote until we have a consensus on the full membership of the committee. So thank you everyone for considering my request.
Thank you so much for speaking to that, Ananda. Any further discussion? So we will vote, I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to decide if we do go back and say we want to discuss the committee members, we don't have a procedure in place for how we do that. The only thing we have in place is for what we did already. And so we would have to go back and redo this policy before we actually move forward with the renaming process. Is that correct?
Do
Yes,
we have to
as,
accept it as a proposal?
Yes. Someone.
as this currently stands, this is the policy of the board. And so, yes, the board policy would have to be rewritten. And then we would have to go back. I will note that as is generally the case with the board and ad hoc committees, typically those committees are named by the chair of the board with input, but ultimately the way the board has been set up and the way it's set up with regard to this policy, it is the chair.
So, yeah, let's say that we do not vote for these lists of people. Like, do we have to rewrite the policy, or can we just start the process over again, accept a new proposal, and then go through it again?
Savion, I would point you to the fact that the people that were named by your colleagues. And so essentially you could end up with the same person being named again and being selected again, right? So I don't know how you get around that. I don't know how you indicate that the person you don't want to be selected won't be selected, if that makes sense.
Just procedurally, if this list of names is voted down, can we accept a new proposal, and then the names listed for the new proposal will be the names listed for the new proposal?
You'd resolicit names and you might end up with the same names again, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. But it's not a guarantee.
Correct.
Okay.
But now that there is.
Cisco Schmidt and then Ananda?
Yeah, I just want to say that we have, 14 people who have agreed to participate on this committee, and we have 25 proposals that have been gathered from across the community. So I just want us to be aware of that too. This is something that I'm hoping will be put together as a process for us that unifies our memorial community as we go through this process, and it is something that is being done with the larger memorial community, not to them. And I'm just concerned about how we're moving through this discussion tonight.
Ananda.
I don't have anything else. President Muldrow, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to this. I'll stand on my request for my colleagues to reconsider, specifically because of the importance of naming a high school that Chris just alluded to.
All right, if there's no further discussion, we're gonna vote on Ananda's motion to delay first, and then if that motion fails, we'll vote on the other motion.
Someone's mic on, there's like this ringing.
There is a ring.
I'm not sure what that is. That could be something I can't fix.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair.
No, that's very,
If it wasn't causing
very
physical pain, I
aggravating.
would not
Yeah,
say
it's
it.
something in the hall, it's like, weekends.
Thank you. Apologize, autistic moment.
no worries, Nikki. All right, so all in favor of Ananda's motion to delay the vote on this committee? And I'll start with you, Julia, your advisory vote.
I'll abstain.
All those in favor, aye? All right.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay? Nay. Motion fails, 2-5. I'm gonna read the original motion. I move that the Board of Education establish a 12-person committee for the purpose of renaming Memorial High School and designating Floyd Rose as the chairperson as set forth in the document prepared for the regular meeting of the Board of Education dated April 26, 2021. I further move that 2 people be designated as alternates should the need arise as set forth in the documents prepared for the regular board meeting dated April 26, 2021.
Second, Nikki.
All those, Julia, your advisory vote?
I'll abstain.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 5-2. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Got 2 moves and no second.
Second.
Thank you. Julia, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Beautiful. Thank you all.
Good.